All right, we're live. We have 5 eyeballs right now. So, hello everybody.
Yes.
Hello, Glenn. I knew you were going to be first. Just kidding.
There we go. Perfect.
Glenn's got the best dad jokes, by the way.
Ooh, leave us some dad jokes in the comments, please.
I know, right? I saw one the other day where
Hey,
somebody
Martin.
was laughing so awesomely hard. You know, when you hear like a baby's laugh, it's just contagious. You just continue to laugh after that. This guy was wheezing so hard where you just couldn't help but laugh because he had such a good laugh.
Hello, Bob. Glenn said to be careful what you ask for. So. All right, we're going to give it just a minute or two, let some more people tune in before we dig into this. So, how's everyone doing today?
Ah, there it is.
So good. Ready for this interview.
Just letting everyone know that my cat is in the room and might pop in for a guest feature briefly. So, though the pleasures of doing webinars from home.
Right?
So,
We'll keep him.
I think it's great.
it is pretty cool that we've
Yeah,
all
but
been
we don't know.
able-
David could have like.
No. You go.
I was gonna say we could have David with a bunch of like bears just strolling through the background or birds that like fly through the screen. So
I know.
You never know what's going to
happen at
happen.
David's end.
Right? I wish,
So.
man, I know we're not using Zoom, we're using GoToMeeting, but man, if we were using Zoom, we could all have the backgrounds that change and
I saw that.
dang it. Maybe GoToMeeting has that feature and we just aren't taking advantage of it. Who knows? Hi, everybody. Hi, Trish. Hi, Tish. Hi, Emil. Steve. Becky. Hello. We're up to 49 people. We hope you're all doing well.
Wow.
Let's give it another minute or two. The numbers are going up, so we're gonna let everyone catch in, and then we'll get in. We'll dig in. So.
I told him we were giving away free stuff, so that's probably why a lot of people showed up.
So you're giving away free stuff.
Oh, good.
I'm not giving.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
All right. Let's see. So David, I see that you have a guest with you.
I do. This is my new intern, Barry. Barry used to work in the golf industry, but he is now a full-time photography intern. He's quite handy. At worst case scenario, he finds honey. If we're out in the woods and we're photographing, he finds the honey, and that always helps.
Hi, Margot. Hi, Stacy. Hi, Ed. Alrighty, we're up to 60 people. Hi, Sandra. I live in Fort Worth too. And actually, with that, I'll segue. Let's do some introductions. So
Perfect.
my name is Sarah, and I am a sales rep for Tamron USA. I am based in Texas. I am an Austinite, but I now live in Fort Worth. I travel through Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri quite a bit. So if you visit any camera stores in those states, and of course Texas, we've probably met, and maybe we'll meet in the future. So yeah, with that, I also have my colleague Erica with me.
Hey guys, hi. I'm Erica. I am a national tech rep with Tamron USA. Which usually means that I get to travel nationally to meet each and every one of you on the road, but we don't really get to do that right now. So you are coming to me, or I'm coming to you from my living room in San Diego, California. I'm originally from Boston, but I moved out west a couple of years ago. I just kind of got sick of the snow, but yeah. And then we have our special guest today, Mr. David Akoubian.
Hi, I'm just a big kid with a camera.
And that's it. Interview's over.
That's the perfect introduction. That's it. Oh man. So you think we're good? We can get right into it?
Yeah, let's get started. Looks like we have about 65 people with us. So let's get kicking.
Awesome. Okay, so David, we're going to talk a lot about you today. Sound good?
Okay. if we have to.
I don't know if we're like talking through Barry, if Barry's going to start just like in the background talking to us. I don't know what's going to happen, but
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, if he has
So I
anything
won't
to
talk in
say.
third person.
well, so let's start off. For those people out there who don't know your work, who don't know about your photography, tell us about your photography, what you like to shoot. What do you like to do?
I shoot anything. I mean, I've worked as a full-time portrait photographer. I've even photographed school kids. But I think that my love has always been nature. My passion's been the outdoors. I was a painter before I was actually a photographer, a painter with a very short attention span. And to help me remember the scenes that I wanted to paint, my dad had put a camera in my hand, that and to get me over my shyness. Um, and I ended up just enjoying the creating process with my camera more than I did, brushes and canvas and paint. So, I still pick it up every once in a while, but, I just love being outdoors. I mean, I moved my studio outside for this, even with the pollen and the cold, snap and everything else. I just, nature's my first love. But I photograph everything. And I threw a couple images into our little discussion of one of the old portraits and street stuff that I did even years ago. So
That's awesome. I actually didn't know until earlier today that you did, weddings and portrait. And I mean, I see you as Bear Woods Photography, the nature guy. So I didn't know that. I think that's pretty great. Where did your name, I know we kind of talked about this the other day, but where did your name of Bear Woods come from?
well, we've had property up here. We've been up here for over 20 years now, probably 24 years. And when we were trying to name our little bungalow or our cabin, and at the same time name our photography business, literally a bear walked by. And we just said, there's bears in the woods, so we'll call it Bear Woods Photography and the Bear Woods Bungalow. And it's just stuck ever since then.
Cool. Very cool. Do you want to, Sarah, when do you think it would be cool if we brought up some of his photos so that we could see? Should we do that in this portion, or should we?
Yeah, no, let's do it now.
Yeah.
Let's pull some up.
Okay. David, do you want to share some of your, just your website maybe, or some photos? That way we could get an idea of your website, where your photos are, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. I've got to take the screen, right? So I've got to come over here, click this. So I'll sort of give you an idea of where I got my start and what I used to do. I started photographing in 1970. Oops, let me click pause there and go back. I started photographing in 1972. And my first exposure to Tamron actually was in about 1978 or so, when I bought a Tamron Adaptol 90 macro 2.5 lens, and I was shooting a Pentax Spotmatic at the time. And so I eventually made a change to Nikon, and it was great because you just took the mount off and put the other mount on. But because I was young and I didn't really have a lot of money, I had jobs but didn't have a lot of money, macro was just the perfect thing to me. And so I started just shooting all the macro that I could. And actually I can sort of segue into another part of it as well, because that's how I actually got my start in this business. When I got out of the Marine Corps in 1992, I decided that I needed to do something as an adult. So I declared myself a photographer and started doing portraits and photographing school children and anything that I could. And I got really burned out on it almost around 1993, somewhere in that area, beginning of 94. And I decided to go to a workshop in the Great Smoky Mountains where a guy named John Shaw was going to be the speaker. And they had a photo contest there. And the winner of the photo contest was going to be an outdoor photographer, going to be featured an outdoor photographer. And I had made my mind up that this was going to be my big break, that I was going to win the photo contest, and I was going to get introduced to the world, and I'd be an overnight success. Everyone, that's the way it happens, is you're always an overnight success in this business, even if the night takes 20 years. Yeah, it always does. So I went up there and I had my macro lens out, and I photographed a little inchworm on the side of this British soldier lichen, and I turned it in for my picture for the contest. And, well, guess what? I didn't win. But it was kind of funny because John and the owner of the company, a guy named Bill Fortney, had come to me and they said, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I'm a professional photographer. And they said, well, we saw you out in the field and I was sort of helping people. I was out there and they said, we really enjoyed the way that you were teaching people and we want to offer you a job. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I'd love to do that. And they said, well, don't get too excited because, we really can't pay you. And I said, well, that's my current salary. So we're good there. But what they said they would do is, I was going to be traveling for as long as I was with the company. It was the Great American Photography Weekends. I would travel with John Shaw and Art Wolf and Galen Rao and Brian Peterson and Pat O'Hara and just teach beside them, learn with them when we weren't, doing a workshop. And I did that for about 2.5 or 3 years. So it was the greatest education. And at the same time, it really expanded my photography even more to do landscapes and everything else. But when I used to do portraits, it was one of those things where you had to do it and it wasn't always exciting. But when I finally got to go out and do people's portraits because I just enjoyed it, it became totally different. And, one of my favorite portrait lenses is actually the 15-30. And, just going down and it's a different type of photography when you use a wide angle lens like that, because all of a sudden with a 70-200, you're off in the distance. There's not that personal connection you have with your subject. Whereas with a 15-30, and this is at 15 millimeters, you're 12 inches from your subject. So you get this intimate connection with your subject. And that's when you get responses on someone's faces like this. This is down in Apalachicola, Florida. So I still fall back and, we talked about it before we went live that when I do portraits, I tend to see portrait photography in black and white and wedding photography in black and white, whereas I don't see landscapes in black and white necessarily. I see them in color. So for me, I still love doing black and white. And when I do, I like to go out and find subjects like this, good, characters that have a lot of distinct marks on their faces and stuff. So it sort of makes it a little bit fun. Not having the money to travel, I spent a lot of time in the North Georgia mountains photographing waterfalls, and I just, loved finding anything that really drew my attention. And with me, because I was a painter, I think that everything that you photograph should be somewhat a reflection of yourself. And so for me, I love the mood of slow water. And I don't like when I go to a river and I trout fish or something, I enjoy just relaxing. And rushing water in an image to me is almost tense. Whereas slowing that water down, putting a circular polarizer, putting a neutral density filter on the front, it makes the water look the way that I want it to feel. And it's kind of funny because photographers talk a lot about, there's deep discussions about pre-visualization and all these other things. And for me, I pre-visualize the mood that I'm feeling when I'm looking at a scene and what I'm trying to look for. And that's what I do with waterfalls. A couple of the waterfalls close to me, I love to get out and spend time just hiking along the river, photographing as we go. It's just so relaxing to me to do stuff like that. I guess my love for landscape photography started at around 1976. I know you guys weren't alive then, but I went to the Grand Tetons with my father, and I immediately, I had never seen anything like it. We had been in North Carolina, and I was born in California, actually near Joshua Tree, but I don't remember it. I was a little, 1.5 years old. So I don't remember that cross-country drive. I don't remember all of that. But going in 1976, I immediately fell in love with the Tetons. I fell in love with the grand landscape and just automatically just wanted to spend all the time that I could traveling and photographing these big scenic places and stuff. And just one of the questions later I know is going to be my favorite place, so I won't spoil it and say the Tetons now. Because there's other favorite places too. So, while I'm on the subject with the Tetons, let me see if I can advance this. Being one of the Tamron image masters, it's really neat because, you get to, and anybody that goes to Tamron events knows that you get to check out a lens and you get to try these lenses and in real world scenarios. And for me, this was at a workshop. We had our group set up to photograph this particular scene. And obviously the foreground interest was going to be the mule's ear, oxeye daisies, whatever they are, the Tetons in the background. And I was really hoping those clouds were going to light up. And this is when Tamron first released the 16-300. And it's funny because a lot of professionals will look at you and frown. You're using an all-in-one zoom. That's professionals don't use all-in-one zooms. Well, I know a lot that do, me included. And all of a sudden, right when the light didn't light up the clouds, but it grabbed one thing out of the sky, there were a couple of people in my group that had the old 18-270s, and we had 16-300s. And for about 15 or 20 seconds, not enough time to change a lens, this scene appeared, which was, when you go back to the other image, is way up here in this teeny tiny section. So without having an all-in-one zoom, you would never have been able to change the lens to capture that light that was only lasting 15, 20, 30 seconds. And there was another Tamron photographer, an ambassador, who was there at the time, and he heard all of our cameras going, and he was thinking, boy, they're photographing some boring stuff. And then we showed him, and he said, I'm going to have to get a hold of one of those lenses as soon as I can. I'm not going to say who it was, in case he's on there.
He knows who he is. That's fine.
Yeah, that's just one of my little things that just, don't get into a situation where the lens is nothing more than a tool to capture your vision. And getting to know what the lens's capabilities are is crucial, because you can get images like this and you can go pixel level, it's tack sharp, that without an all-in-one zoom you would have never gotten an image like this. So I tell people, don't be hasty in judging an all-in-one zoom, because they're phenomenal lenses. So one of my
like how you talk about your style like that. That's cool.
What's that?
I just really like how you talk about your style like that. That's just a different way to approach it, and that everybody has their different style, and you're choosing. It is just a tool. It's a piece of equipment that you use to share your vision, and it's really nice to hear you say that.
Well, and a lot of times what I tell people to do is, on my workshops especially, I always say that I can usually tell what someone does for a living by their favorite lens. People who like telephoto lenses are very detail oriented in their work. People who use wide angle lenses typically have broad responsibilities, and macro photography is a telephoto, so they're even more precise. So what I like to do is I like to take away their favorite lens and make them use their least favorite lens to capture their favorite subjects. Because if you don't make mistakes and you don't work outside of your box, you're never going to learn anything. I go out every time I'm photographing wanting to learn something, wanting to do something different. And, once you start doing that with people, I think that they start to feel a little more comfortable what they're doing, and they actually start having fun in photography, which, God forbid you have fun doing something that, you're going out to enjoy. So, for me, the image that's up here now is one of my favorite bird, probably got me into birding, was an eastern bluebird. And we've created, our yard is a certified wildlife sanctuary, and we've got food sources, we've got shelter, we've got water, everything else up here. And one of the main reasons that I did it, beyond the fact that I just wanted to see beautiful birds, was I've built and I've donated probably hundreds of bluebird houses, and I try to keep good records of it and everything else. And I've got a set of bluebirds behind the house right now with 5 babies, and I put mealworms out and everything else. But I did that with the intent, and the bird studio that I built inside of there was, the main intention was to capture this very image, that I'd always wanted to get a picture of a bluebird feeding its baby. And you can see, this to me is just, it shows everything that, anyone that's been around kids or been a kid, you want that food and you want it now. So I I try not to humanize my subjects, but the bluebird's looking at me like, you did this to me. This is all your fault. Um, but to give you an idea with my bird studio, for instance, what I did is when we created the wildlife sanctuary, as you guys know, I'm not as much on the road as you guys are, but I travel a lot. So when I'm home, I want to be able to relax, and I love photography. It's a passion. So to me, it's not work. It's always something that I enjoy doing. So I love to just sit and photograph birds. I love to photograph my 3 chairs, which we'll see an image in a few minutes. Um, so for me, I wanted to create a studio that when I get the birds into my yard with the wildlife sanctuary, that I can sit in my back porch with a cup of coffee, my little Wyoming coffee mug, and have a yogurt or a bowl of cereal and just take pictures of the birds. And this is exactly what I do. I mean, people have emailed me and said, do you build a blind? Do you get camouflage? Do you camouflage your lenses? And I don't. I mean, I'm dressed just like I am now. And yes, in pajama bottoms. When I'm on the back porch. I'm not going to be like Jonathan and say, Jonathan Thorpe's comment about not wearing pants last week. So.
Yes, please call him out live. Please.
Yes, and Jonathan, I drink coffee. So.
Oh yeah, my mind's still blown by that.
I know. I when I heard that, and he's so hyper, and I don't get it. So for me, though, it's just being on the back porch, photographing the birds, and especially the bluebirds, and it feels good that we monitor them, and every year we're getting anywhere from 12 to 15 birds out into the environment, bluebirds. And I'd like to believe that we're going to populate this mountain with the bluebirds ourselves. But some of the other birds that I get in the backyard, we've got and if I can sort of plug another webinar, the one that we're doing Friday with Ken, it's much more detailed as to the bird sanctuary and stuff. But the Carolina wren, my wife and I went out of town one weekend, and we had a galvanized tin watering can on the back porch. And we got back, and the birds had built a nest in the can, and they had laid eggs. So we didn't have the heart to empty it or anything else. So we just protected it. And when they fledged, we moved it, but they would always find the can. And eventually the can started leaking. So my wife said, let's just screw it to the side of the wall. So literally we've got it on the wall, and they have 4 broods every year out of that tin can that's sitting on the wall. Yeah, so they've got babies in the back porch. I've been doing some video of them the past couple of days, which I'll post very, very soon. But this guy's name is Jimmy. I never knew why he was called Jimmy till
name them.
Well, my wife says he sits outside the window going, Jimmy, 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 Jimmy. So she named him Jimmy.
That's adorable.
That's perfect.
I have to ask a very random question, because
sure.
Are you familiar with like birds and their migration patterns? I know I'm not taking the question that's happening later, but I swear I saw one of those bluebirds with the orange belly like yesterday here in Fort Worth. Do you know if they normally get over here, or am I seeing something different?
No, you could easily get the bluebirds. Now, I have to look at the maps and stuff. I'm not sure if you get western bluebirds, but I'm guessing you get eastern bluebirds. East of the Rockies, you would get eastern bluebirds. There's 3 types of bluebirds: eastern, mountain, and then western. With the eastern bluebirds, let me see if I can go back to him for a second. The eastern bluebird, there'll be some white. The mountain bluebird, the western bluebird has more red on the back and stuff. But I'm sure that they're down there all the time. They should be.
I was gonna say it's like deja vu, because I've never actually noticed birds really in my life, but they're so striking, and they've been like outside our window, and I noticed them. So I just
they're absolutely beautiful. They a great song. The greatest Christmas gift that I've ever gotten. My wife several years ago gave me a continuing education course from Cornell University from the lab of ornithology. That was all about birds. When you learned, all the parts of a bird, you had to learn all the songs of like 400 birds and everything else. And they had tests and everything.
Oh
it's really...
David, Ken joked that he was going to turn me into a birder one day. This was back when I first started. He was like, yeah, you're going to be a birder. I'm like, no, I'm absolutely not going to be a birder. I can't memorize the names. It's too much for me. They're beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but I can't keep track like you guys can. So when we were out in Florida for one of the last birding events I did, which was, a couple of years ago, we had to find this bird that it's like the only bird I know. But I just called it the BPB, the big pink bird, and I know that it's a roseate spoonbill, and that's like the only bird or fancy bird that I know. It's really pretty.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a fancy bird, BPB.
Yeah, I'm trying to make Ken a birder, and Andre and Damien as well. So all the Tamarron guys, I'm trying to get them all to be birders. So Damien's no hope, but we'll keep trying. So.
It's got to chip away.
And one of the things we did when we were, doing all this is, I mean, my wife just refers to them as, little yellow birds. It's either yellow bird or a brown bird. So when she sees a blackbird, she's like, I have no idea. It's not a yellow bird. It's not a brown bird. But one of the things we did was we wanted the studio to be as natural as possible. So we plant all these wildflowers that are native, and you get stuff like this with this little Carolina chickadee that comes down and is picking the seed heads and stuff. And it's just, and that's actually, I don't know if you can hear it, but that's what's going on in the background right now is a couple chickadees are singing. It's just amazing just when you sit out there enough and the birds get your trust. I mean, they don't care. They come right up to you. It was funny. I went inside and we looked out the window and there was a bird sitting on the camera. And, it was like I had walked away for just a minute and I was like, okay, I guess I need to get back out there. They're wondering why I'm not up there taking their picture. They're posing for me. So.
Do you have any tips for, like, I'm not trying to jump ahead or anything, but now that we're kind of on the birding topic, do you have any tips for like a beginner bird photographer who's looking to kind of set up their own little, like, how did you do your research for all of that, basically? Where did you start?
Well, I contacted to be certified as a wildlife sanctuary, there's very specific things the criteria that you have to meet, but some of it is very, very easy to do. What you do is you've heard the term pecking order, and it's just simply that the dominant birds go to the feeders first. And so if you put a single feeder up, other birds that are in the area will either wait in a branch or whatever. So what you do is you create something outside of a window. So let's say you've got a kitchen window or you've got a place on the porch and you put the feeder off to the side and about 2 or 3 feet away, you just somehow attach a stick that will encourage the birds to land on the stick, and they wait until the other bird finishes, then it flies off and you just take the picture. What I do is part of the research for me, the closest post, like this black and white warbler, is sitting on the nearest post to my back porch. I use the minimum focusing distance of the 150 to 600 G2, and I measure about 6 inches to a foot beyond that. And that's where I put my post. So what I'm trying to do is get separation between the bird and the background, which this background is probably another 12, 15 feet behind it. So what I'm doing is creating that smooth palette of color behind it. But by getting it just outside of the minimum focusing distance, I can shoot at f8 and get a good depth of field even that close. So I guess part of it with beginners that are getting into it, you sort of have to, number one, get comfortable with your gear. Find out what your lens can and can't do. Because that's the biggest frustration is people say, well, I bought this lens and it's not working for me. But, just learn what it can do. Test it. Sit down. Don't go out and look for birds when you first get a lens. Set up a random still life somewhere and practice doing, images on a still life. And then you find, okay, now I can apply it to something else. My settings, for instance, my typical settings when I'm doing birds in the studio, I shoot in manual mode. 1/125th of a second is what I start out with, and then f8. But I put my ISO in auto ISO because there's shadow and there's highlight, and nobody that I know is fast enough to adjust the ISO from highlight to shadow. So the auto ISO is going to make that adjustment. Back in the film days, you had 5 stops of latitude, whereas with digital, you can have as much as 12. So, getting it closer by using that auto ISO is going to get an image on your sensor. And, you find that it gets easier. Bird photography, especially birds in flight, out of all the photography I've ever done. Without a doubt, birds in flight are the hardest. The only difference with birds in flight is you have to get used to movement. I mean, you see a bird in the sky and you think, okay, here comes an eagle flying in with the blue sky. But when you look through a 600 millimeter lens, that's a really tiny bird and that's a big old blue sky, and you have to search and find it. So, I recommend starting at 300 and then zooming in once you locate the bird. A lot of it's just tricks. And the tough thing is with everything that's going on in the world right now, a lot of the birding festivals got canceled. And I encouraged someone that if you're going to do bird photography and you're just learning, go to one of the birding festivals that Tamron's going to be at, because number one, you're going to have one of your image masters, myself or Lisa, or, someone that's going to be there, plus the professionals, the tech reps and the sales professionals. And you can borrow these lenses. You can go out and you can learn to shoot them. So you take away a lot of the unsure factor. You start to learn this stuff really easily. And you may find that you think originally you wanted to get one lens, but you've tried a different ones and that one works better for you. So just great opportunities, the stuff that you can do. And hopefully everything gets back to normal, whatever that normal is, in the near future. So we'll see. But,
yeah, that's some really great advice.
Well, thank you. I got more birds. Now, this is a mountain bluebird.
Oh, it's so cute. I'm going to fix my light real quick.
Yeah, now, there's a little bit of a thought as to when digital photography first came out. I remember standing in front of my classes and saying, don't fall into this digital photography craze. It's a passing fancy, and I said it with authority. And I thought to myself, there's no way in the world digital is ever going to replace my Fujichrome Velvia or my Kodak Ektachrome. And, it took me 3 years to realize that it was not just a passing fancy. But now if someone were to say to me, I'm going to give you back your film camera and I'm going to give you some film, I'd have to ignore them because it never will replace my Velvia, or Velvia will never replace digital for me, because I could never do bird photography like this with film. The lenses weren't quick enough. The latitude of the film wasn't there. And I totally credit my bird photography to the original Tamron 150-600, because prior to that, I could never track a bird in flight. I could never focus on a bird in flight fast enough. But, with that lens and then with the introduction of the G2, it's fun. I mean, before it's like, you start doing birds in flight and you want to take up golf because you're so frustrated and you want to find something less frustrating. But now it's just phenomenal. Yeah, it's just, I just love it. It's just, it's intimidating until you get comfortable with it and you find something that's going to work for you. And like I said, this particular bird, this was one of my birds. It was my nemesis. I tried for years and years and years to photograph it. And I was photographing at Moulton's Barn on Mormon Row in the Tetons. And I got to the car. And when I got to the car, I turned around and this guy landed on this fence post. And I got this image, and when I started the little rant about the film, the big confusion is people were going to digitally manipulate images that wouldn't be natural history anymore. Because there's two types of nature photographers. There's fine art, which you're creating what your vision is on the sensor in the final image. Then there's natural history that's just simply capturing something that is a moment in time. And for me, I wanted to get this bird, and right when I went to get this image, when I released the shutter, the dilemma of, do I become a fine art photographer at this point in time, or do I become a natural history photographer? Because I don't think you can see my cursor. Right here, the bird pooped. And there was a big pile of white poop in there. And so I decided that I was going to be fine art, and I was going to use the Photoshop bird poop removal tool. And so I did that. And honestly, and that's one thing that I think that people are always scared to admit when they've cloned something out, when they've done a composite. And, I think that I've never heard it better than Andre Constantini, who's also does a lot of stuff with Tamron. His whole thing with photography is there's only one rule in photography: just don't lie. So if you've done something, just say, yeah, I did it. Stand up, be proud of it. Because if you say, no, I didn't do anything, if I were to say, oh, I didn't remove the bird poop, and then someone else say, well, I was standing 10 feet beside you and there's bird poop in my image. It's better just to be out front and be honest with what you're shooting. Composites are something that I don't know how to do, so I'm not good at it. But if you can do it, I mean, it's a great art form. I mean, embrace it and just be open about it. So if you notice, I get often rants a lot. So
No, but
That's what we're here for. We're here for listening to your rants.
Well, and a lot of times I feel like with making images, even in a documentary sense, I mean, even if the exact moment you took the shot, there might have been poop there a moment before there wasn't, and you're just trying to capture it how you saw it. So, I mean, there's definite truth to it still.
And it may be jumping ahead again on one of the answers, but I tell all the people that I ever talk to, if you want to improve your photography, one tip that you could just keep in mind is stop taking pictures, because pictures are nothing more than that moment in time. I mean, it's 1/125th of a second at f8. That's it. You're capturing that singular moment in time. But when you start to do compositions, you start to look at elements in your frame, you start to select a lens, select an aperture, depth of field, you're no longer capturing just a moment in time, but you're capturing the memory of that moment. So if you start to think the process of creating an image versus just simply taking a picture, you'll see your photography jump way up. I mean, go way up. So that's that one piece. If I jumped ahead, sorry. This little guy is Allie. One thing that's her actual name is Allie. A 6-year-old named her. But when I tell people, the old joke about, the guy walking down the New York streets with a violin, and he says, stops to a guy and he says, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the guy says, practice, man, practice. So I love to go to rehab centers and nature centers and practice. Number one, it's a good cause. These are birds that cannot be released into the wild, that are living their life as ambassadors, so people can see, a beautiful great horned owl or a golden eagle or something. And so we do our workshop in the Tetons every year, and we go to the Teton Raptor Center. And this was the year that they had just released the 100-400. This was a 100-400 image on a D850. And I mean, I fell in love with the lens that day, because boy, when you go down, you can see every little detail and every feather on this bird. But again, don't pressure animals in the wild. Don't practice on animals in the wild. Practice on animals that are captive, that you're benefiting by paying to go into those places. And I think that improves your photography, but it does good as well. So, my little spiel. This is my backyard as well. This is probably my favorite bird image I've ever done. It's a scarlet tanager, and the scarlet tanagers come in and glean the foliage for Japanese beetles. So I don't spray any insecticides or testicides in my yard. I let the insects come out, and these are my insecticides, the birds. I'm so thankful this bird lined up perfectly with the highlight behind it. I mean, I could not have asked this bird to have gotten into a better spot. So absolutely just a beautiful bird. But again, practicing in a studio situation, practicing in a rehab center, makes it, when you get into the wild, when you get a situation like this, you're ready for it. This is on a little lake that's about 20 minutes away. There's a pair of eagles, and they stock the lake with trout. So, when the eagle hears a fisherman's reel and they see the trout start to flap around, they'll go down and take the fish, because the fisherman will start to reel in really quick. The hook comes out of the fish's mouth. The eagle grabs it. This was at like 350 millimeters, and this is full frame. Just absolutely just one of those incredible times that you look at this. And I mean, an eagle's talon is about as big as my hand, and they've got a grip strength of 1,500, 2,000 pounds per square inch. So you can just imagine. I mean, they're such efficient hunters, and to me, this was just. I mean, it's one of those that I could have left at this image and been totally happy, but you got to stay out and have more fun. So, but I'm more than just a bird photographer. This is my backyard. These are the three chairs. We live at about 3,000 feet in the North Georgia mountains, and we face southwest. So, a lot of people think of the South as just getting ice storms and stuff, but we get snow. And when it started snowing, this was the beginning of December, I think it was. And my wife looked at me and she goes, "We should have put a wreath out on the chairs." And so I said, "I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it out. Maybe we'll get another inch of snow. It'll cover up my footprints." But we ended up getting like 8 more inches of snow. And just, the perfect, scenario for us. But, down, straight ahead of where the chairs are at is a little town called Jasper, Georgia. And it's the, the background to a lot of my images, especially with the three chairs. But a funny story with the three chairs is originally we had a fourth chair. They were in 2 different areas. But the fourth chair that was there was made of cypress. And apparently bears love to eat cypress. And a bear ate the fourth chair. So the 4 chairs became the 3 chairs. And I'm convinced that it's one of Barry's relatives. And he was simply trying to tell us that, come on, man, rules of thirds, 3 works better than 4 does, because, with composition, you worry about splitting a frame, that you want to have, some balance, and 3 chairs gives you better balance than 4 chairs will give you. So I'm convinced the bear was just trying to help me, compositionally in the image.
It's like, you don't need it.
Yeah, exactly.
And everyone watching, I invite you guys to go to David's website for sure and check out the series of 3 chairs, because they're all so dynamic, but it's the same scene, and I think it's really lovely.
They actually have their own Facebook page too.
Really?
Oh, they do. Okay.
They do. I don't get to post to it every day. I should, but it's like we're either really, really pretty clear blue skies or in the fog. And so, I'm like, okay, should I do another clear blue sky image or should I do another fog image? Just depending upon which day it is. But every chance that we get some type of a weird weather phenomenon, I'm out there photographing it. So, and I do try to post to it fairly regularly. And when I look at the idea of the grand landscape, I love the rocky coast of Maine. This is the Bass Harbor Lighthouse. We literally had been out all night for this image. We were there for sunset. The tide came in. We retreated a little bit. Then we went back down for sunrise. And, just absolutely just an incredible situation. There was a photographer that showed up right at sunrise. There was probably 12 of us where we were at. But he stood, I don't know if you can see my cursor. He stood right there on the rock in front of us. And one of the guys that was with me was from New York, or from New Jersey, actually. And we were just flabbergasted that this guy was standing there on this rock in front of us, right when the sun was getting ready to peek over the horizon. And finally, the guy from Jersey yelled to the guy and says, "Hey, you're in our frame." And the guy literally turned around and said, "That's what Photoshop is for." And yeah. So, and I learned never mess with a Jersey guy that day.
I have a lot of thoughts of things I can't say right now.
My friend from Jersey said, he goes, I'm from New Jersey, and I'm going to show you what rocks are for in New Jersey. And
Good response. Good response.
I'd be on that guy's side for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So the guy did move, and then he comes back there to where we were, and he was bold. I'll give him credit for that. His wife was apologizing to us. But the guy was bold because he said we needed to move over so he could get the reflection.
Okay.
Okay.
And we did eventually move and let him get it. But, it just, I'm one of these that if sun rises at 6 o'clock, I'm out at 4 o'clock. And, it just, I don't want to ever miss the perfect light. Because I'm the eternal optimist. I feel every day I go out, it's going to be better than the day before, and it's going to be absolutely incredible light. So, that's what I'm hoping for. But, this was just one of those images that I always wanted to get and finally did get it. And let's see, push this button again. Come on, button. I'll push this button. Okay, for some reason it doesn't want to move.
Well, while you're doing that, I was going to ask you about one of your, you talk about all these images that you're shooting. There's so many different genres that you're, touching on: landscapes, wildlife, weddings, portraits, street stuff. You've kind of dabbled in everything. Do you have a proudest moment with all of them? Whether it's that lighthouse and getting that specific shot, or a certain bird in your backyard, do you have like one of those that's your proudest moment?
Yeah, when I told you guys earlier I was struggling with answers to the questions you guys sent me, that was the one I was struggling with.
What's your
Really?
gut reaction?
You're so good at what you do.
Yeah, well, I guess the most rewarding image or time photographing was last year when we were getting ready for Photo Plus. When Stacy had sent out, for those of you who don't know Stacy, she's the vice president of marketing, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, they're shaking their heads. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So we were talking about different projects and stuff we were going to present on and shoot, and I started a project called Heroes and Healers, which was going to be a project on service dogs. And just that whole thing, I mean, I was like, golly, because when I contacted one of the local organizations here in Atlanta, Canine Assistance, they were like, okay, you're sure coming out and photograph the dogs and some of the people, because every person had a story, and the people don't choose their dogs, the dogs choose their people. So they don't train them specifically to be a diabetic alert dog. They're trained in general, but then the dogs sense what that person needs, and that's the person they go to. But the thing that was really just so rewarding to me was the first time we did it, there was a couple people that were there. Then the next time I went out, there was more people that were there, and they were saying, can we bring our whole family out? Because we've never had a family portrait. And you were thinking, golly, you're killing me. I'm ready to go into tears, because here you're not photographing, just a story of a dog and a person, but, you're photographing a family and everything they've been through. And it was just so interesting and so neat to work with these families and hear the stories of how the dogs had changed their life, and everything about it. I mean, there was one kid that was born in another country. He came to this country and had never said a word to a single person besides his mom until he was 18 years old. And the first words that he said to a stranger was, the dog had a question for the person. And he asked the person a question saying, my dog wants to know why you do this. And the mom looked like, oh my God, he's speaking. And so after he was telling his story and everything, and I said to him, I said, you should really be, a motivational speaker. And he said, I am. He says, I have a YouTube channel. You can go to the YouTube channel and check it out. And I did. And the kid's a motivational speaker. So in 10 years, he went from never speaking to people because of this dog to being a motivational speaker. And I was like, wow. And that to me is rewarding when you capture a picture and the kid's like, this is the best picture I've ever had of my dogs and stuff. So I guess that answers that.
100%.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really, really cool. I did not know that.
Yeah. So it's fun.
You do have some proud moments.
Yeah. At Photo Plus, I tell you, the neatest thing was when they first brought, for those people that weren't at Photo Plus, Tamron had a pet photography studio, and I was working with the puppies the first morning, and in our inside thing was, we wanted to get those puppies adopted, the dogs adopted. And the first puppy we brought out, and I can't remember his name now, I feel terrible, didn't even make it through the first photo session, and he was adopted. So it was really a cool feeling just to see that. So
I remember seeing
it was cool.
That's awesome.
Update later on like Instagram from, I think it was Photo Plus, or someone posted that a week or two later, one of the dogs got adopted, and I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, and the other one that was there, Pitbull, she got adopted a couple weeks later.
That's the one.
Yeah, so it was just so neat, So, back to the non-mushy stuff before I start crying and stuff. So,
sorry, yeah, back to your landscape. Sorry.
This is a little place called Scipio Creek in Apalachicola, and This is where my wife and I got married, not in the marina, but in Apalachicola. So it's always, held a very special place for me. And this is one of those, again, I included it because it was truly a teaching moment for me, because I got up that morning and it was miserable. It was raining. It was horrible. And I really, my inclination was to stay in bed and not get up, just write it off. So I literally convinced myself that the only reason I was going to go out was to get a fresh cup of coffee, and got my coffee. And I came down here, and all of a sudden the sky started opening up a little bit. And I got over the other side, and this is when the 17-28, when the Sonys for Sony came out. And when the sky lit up like this, I real quick flipped it into a vertical and did like a 7-shot panoramic. And, to me, the lesson was, I've been doing this for 42 years now, 47 years now. And if you don't get out of bed, you don't get an image like this, go with your gut feeling that tells you if you stay in bed, you're not going to get it. Even if it's miserable, the worst case scenario, you get wet, then you go back the next day and you try to get the image. So it was an incredible morning. This light lasted 15-20 minutes. I've actually got a video of this whole thing on my YouTube channel as well. So, check that out. So
It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. This was, I recently, right before we went to Iceland earlier this year, I torn a knee ligament, but I originally tore it when I was out in Arches National Park with Ken and Patrick Nagel scouting for one of the Tamarron Night Skies workshops, which you guys should check out if you like night skies. The little plug there for those guys. But I went out there with Cecil Holmes and Lou Ramonde and another friend of ours, Rob LaRue, and I had been to Delicate Arch, but I was, not able to hike up this particular day. And I knew Lou and Cecil had never been up there. So we said, you got to go. We told them how to get up there. And then Rob says, I'll hang with you. We'll just go and do something else. And while they were up there, this thunderstorm came through. And right away I said, it would be so cool to get a rainbow over Balanced Rock. So I drove the speed limit and got to Balanced Rock, jumped out with the 15-30, and I got this image. And I mean, a double rainbow, what does it mean over, Balanced Rock? Yeah, you guys got that reference. Good. My instant dilemma was, what do I do? I mean, do I rub this in Cecil and Lou's face that I got this double rainbow over Balanced Rock? I mean,
I'm waiting for his response in the comments, which is why I keep looking, because he's here.
It'll be. But then my fear was, what if they got this double rainbow over Delicate Arch? So I was trying to figure out a way to play it cool, that I would wait until they came down, and then I'd sort of, pry for some answers like, hey, I bet that rainbow looked great, or, did you guys get wet, or just wait for them? And some people were coming down and, obviously in front of them when we went to pick them up. And I said, hey, did you see these two guys? And we described them. They said, yeah, we saw them up the trail a little bit. And I said, do you know if they got that rainbow picture? And they said, oh yeah, they got the rainbow. And I was like, all right, I'm hiding my image. I'm not even going to bring it up. And then I said, so you guys were up at Delicate Arch when they got it? And they said, oh no, we were like halfway down. So the rules changed. As soon as Cecil got there, I was like, look, dude, look what we got. And so that's why I'm waiting for a nasty comment from Cecil.
I can read it too if you want.
Oh yeah, I'll read it
actually,
later.
I guess there's a little bit of a delay, so I'll wait.
Okay. I'm like, oh boy. So it was one of those days that, I was super stoked we got it. And inside, don't, hopefully Cecil's speaker goes out, but I secretly wished he had gotten that picture over Delicate Arch. I wished he had gotten the rainbow over Delicate Arch, because that would have been just an incredible image. And we have a friendly competition. We teach together and do workshops together, but at the same time, we're super supportive of each other's work, and we always want the other one to get a great image. As long as mine's better, we're okay.
He goes all BS. He never considered not rubbing it in.
No, I really did.
Let's Oh,
Oh,
ooh,
I got two more images, I think.
perfect, perfect.
Yes. So when we were out doing that scouting trip that I tore my knee, um, we were looking for some place to photograph the night sky and arches, and this guy was shooting this 10 million candle watt light on the side of Windows Arch, and I got so frustrated. I didn't want to have an evening that was so pretty just turn negative. So I started just wandering through, the desert out there, and I saw this juniper tree, and I just moved over to a spot where this the Milky Way lined up with it. And I mean, just it's probably my favorite night sky image I've ever done. But I tell you, just guys like Ken and Andre and stuff, they know night sky photography so well that if someone wants to learn it, and the Tamron Night Skies workshops they do are just incredible. They you got to go to them, got to. So, and I think this is my last image. I'm a bit of a weather geek, and when I saw the morning, this was the first day of a workshop in the Grand Tetons. And when I saw this, I was telling the group, that we have three objectives when we do a workshop. Number one, we want you to get a wall hanger. We want you to get an image that you're going to put on your wall. People are going to go up and they're going to go, "Oh my God, look at this! This is beautiful." And then you say, "I got it in Cecil and David's workshop." Our second goal is, how you got that image, so we don't always have to be looking over your shoulder. We want you to actually, feel confident in going out and doing it. And then third, we want you to have fun. But this particular morning, I told the group, I said, and when we got there, bear in mind it was dark. It was just clouds in the bottom and clouds in the top. I said, guys, this is the first time in 40 years I've been coming to the Tetons that this scenario was in front of us. And they were like, yeah, what's the big deal? And I said, we've got cloud inversion. And they said, so what's the big deal? And I said, well, we're going to get two sunrises. And they were like, how, that's not impossible. I said, no, it is. I said, do me a favor, get your camera set up. I'm going to give you my settings, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So, all of a sudden the light hit the upper clouds, the high clouds, and just lit them up pink. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I mean, I literally had to run around to some of the people and say, you need to release your shutter. You do not want to miss this. This is incredible. So then they were like, "Oh, wow, that was great." And I was like, "Wait, don't go anywhere because it's not over yet." And then the sun got up a little bit more and it lit those clouds up, that cloud inversion that was in the valley, and just gave us that second sunrise. And again, it was like, you guys need to do the images. And by the end of it, I mean, there literally were tears in people's eyes because it was absolutely an incredible thing to witness. And there were tears in my eyes because this was the first session of a 5-day workshop. And I had to break the news to them that it's all downhill from here because you just got the most incredible sunrise you're ever going to get. So, but those are the images that I chose to share. Do we have some? I know you got more questions for me.
Thank you. Those are incredible.
Yeah,
Those are
thank
really
you.
incredible.
Yeah, that last image of the cloud inversion, I didn't even know what that was called. It's kind of trippy to look at.
It was so weird when it was there because and almost I need to learn the process better because I could bring out more reds and stuff. It was absolutely just, amazing to see it.
It's
It was
beautiful.
eerie.
I think someone who was attending that workshop is in our comments, Sherry Rosen. She said, "The most incredible
Yes.
moment of my life."
Oh,
Oh,
good.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
And then the most disappointing moment in her life was 5 minutes later when we said it's all downhill from here.
That was it. We can all go home now. No, those are beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing those. And we definitely might
Thank
go
you,
back
guys.
to a few of them. I just kind of wanted to touch on a few like business related things.
Okay.
And
I stopped sharing the screen, so I gave it back
Perfect.
to you.
there we go. And I feel like I'm going to ask this question somewhat ignorantly, so don't hate me. As a landscape wildlife photographer, how do you make your living? I mean, because I was creeping on your website and you have some really impressive clients. And I'm curious, were those commissioned or was it licensing or did you go out on assignment? Like, what's your
Um,
day to day?
a little bit of both. When I did the work for Coca-Cola, it was actually photographing the 1996 Olympics.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, so it was something
Cool.
totally even different. Um, and I got that gig through a school photography company. They were when the Olympics were announced in Atlanta, and Coca-Cola hired this company. They said, hey, we need a guy to photograph some events for us and some other stuff, and that's how I got that gig. Um, but a lot of the stuff that I do now is I'm trying to think of the right terminology. A lot of it is speculative work because I used to do a lot of stock photography. And back then you could make a living somewhat at stock photography. Uh, but when the digital age took over, you've got a lot of dollar stock companies now. And I won't put my work on a dollar stock company because I always feel that it's worth more than that. So I kept in contact with a lot of the art directors that I worked with, Scholastic Books and some of these other fine art buyers and stuff. And they'll look at my stuff. I used to use Flickr, and a lot of times now I get I'll contact people and I find their needs list, and especially with birds, they'll say, we need the underside of a tail of a hooded warbler, and I'll go and I'll find a hooded warbler out here and I'll photograph the underside of it because as a nature photographer, the business is inundated with pretty pictures. Everybody can go out and take a pretty picture, but the ones that sell are the ones that are mundane, that it's just the underside of a hooded warbler. My largest print client was PNC Bank, and what they were doing is all the images that they bought from me for prints were done in my yard. And it was just, double exposure macros where I did the Orton effect in camera, where I did a sharp, one sharp exposure, then back focused a little bit to make it blurry. I've sold more. I'd be willing to say I've sold more macro flowers and the undersides of birds and caterpillars and cocoons than I've ever sold landscapes. I sell very, very few landscape work. And I guess part of it is, advice for someone wanting to get in the business. Number one is don't quit your day job until you have to quit your day job. But the other part would be find a niche in the market that you can fill, that you've got to develop relationships with publishers, with art directors and everything else, and you've got to give them a reason to want your work. Also become a writer or team up with a writer, because a lot of the magazines and stuff, if you send an editor of a magazine a bunch of pictures, they've got to do more work because now they've got to find the writing for those pictures, and vice versa. If you send them the article, they've got to find the pictures. But if you send them both and you query them and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing something, do you guys want an article and accompanying pictures on this or this or this? You'll find that they're much more receptive to that idea because it means less work for them. And, they've got so much to do to begin with that anything you can do to take that stress off of them is great. So I guess the thing is that I make a lot of my living off of workshops and lectures and teaching, but from the photographic side of it, it's all stuff that people look at and never consider photographing. Just a wildflower that's in the yard and then sending it off to one of the publishers that does guides. You don't make a lot of money, but when you develop a relationship with them, they tend to use your images if they know you can do it versus the dollar stock, because they can call you at any time and say, hey, do you have any of this? I need it right away. So, I guess that'd be the answer, is relationships.
That's what I was about to say. It's interesting that, you can produce all these, beautiful images that are inspiring and it's what you love to do. But in reality, what's making the big bucks is the more mundane. And a lot of it is relationship building, it seems to be. So people can trust you for multifaceted work. So, well, and that being said, I mean, I know you said a lot of your work, especially work that you've produced for your business, might be more local to where you live. Now that we're all kind of in this situation where we are confined and you have to stay where you are at. How are you coping on a personal level with your work, and as well as, with clients, and, business might not be going?
Yeah, we sort of touched on this the other day that, my hero in life is Sasquatch. The idea of being not seen for, months is awesome to me. I mean, it'd be something that's really neat. And I guess a lot of it is, I used to, when I would travel a lot before, I've been preparing for this my entire life because I photograph so often by myself. I used to hike the Rocky Mountains, photographing marmots and peregrine falcons, by myself. I would go weeks without seeing anybody. So for me, and a lot of people, I guess that the tough part of it is, for me, being alone doesn't mean being lonely. When I go out and I photograph, I use that alone time to, explore things, to get more creative and stuff. So, this has been easy for me somewhat. The tough part of it for me has been, I know that I need to get better on the video side of things, to do more videos for my YouTube channel and everything. And to me, it's like digital. It's something that's new. I'm not familiar with it. So I'm really having to learn all that. That's been the tough part for me, is just not forcing myself to do it, but forcing myself to learn to be better. Again, I try to learn something every day. From the aspect of having to cancel or postpone a few workshops. I mean, that's all part of it. I've been in this business so long that that's just a natural occurrence for different reasons. I mean, wildfires in a national park, it could be anything. This is unusual because it's happened just so broadly to so many people. At the end of it, I mean, I'll be fine because I've got so many avenues of revenue with the photography business. But I feel bad for some of the photographers that are out there because, they found a particular thing in the market, and midstream, because a lot of what you do in the nature industry, you don't get paid for a year, 2 years, whatever the case may be. And for a lot of these people that are just getting into it, they need the money now. They can't wait that year. They can't wait those 2 years for calendar images or something else. But for me, it's just another day. It's, I live in paradise, so I can't complain. So.
Someone just commented and said, "I love your YouTube channel, and I didn't know that you were new to it." So there's some kudos there.
No, well, awesome. Thank you.
So that being said, I mean, are you finding that you're having the time to engage more with video, or are you tapping into social media in a different way? What are some of the things you're doing to stay busy?
A lot of it is, I want to produce more videos because we've really worked hard on the whole bird studio and the sanctuary here. And I want to do a better representation of what this is all about. So I've spent a lot of mornings and afternoons doing B-roll, photographing the birds in the trees and everything else. And, wandering around the property, just videoing some different things. So when I start to put this video together, I can just go to my library of B-roll and just pull something out. Excuse me. So I guess that what I'm doing with a lot of it is just going out and increasing my library of video work. With social media, it's finding ways to engage. I do some stuff with the Out of Chicago people, and they're doing the Out of Chicago Live in a week, and I videoed my segment for it yesterday. So it's kind of interesting because being involved with them is great for me personally, but at the same time, I learned so much from a group like that as well. And Tamron's a big sponsor of them. There's right now, there's so many avenues that people have to do on social media that they normally wouldn't do. I'm going to cough 1 second. Excuse me.
You're good.
He did say he was going to have a sneezing fit, so we're waiting for your sneezing fit.
Yeah. That's why I'm drinking my tea like every 30 seconds, because I feel it.
My coffee's cold by now, but oh well. I guess part of it is, and this is sort of related, photographers that aren't getting involved in social media and aren't getting involved in video and things like that. If you're going to do this for a living, I think it's crucial that you do it. There are photographers that their entire careers have been based on, the advancement of video and stuff. But, the new norm after all of this may include more video watching, more webinars. And if you don't embrace that, you're going to get left behind. So for me, I'm experimenting. I'm loving it. By the end of the week, I will have done 3 webinars, and I'm super psyched about it because, it's just new to me. But I'm never comfortable in front of a camera, but it's getting me more used to it. So it's getting me to be more tolerable of seeing my face on a screen. Because people want to see
I think a
Barry.
lot of photographers will agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, and
That's one of the reasons that I got, when my dad gave me a camera and he signed me up for the annual staff, I was like, this is awesome. I won't have to be in the annual because I'm taking all the pictures.
Well, that's
Sure.
one of the things that Erica and I have been, discussing just in general is how, we're both itching to get back on the road, for our respective roles. And, because so much of what we do is in-person engagement with people and photographers. And, and I personally believe that after this situation, while we will return to that, we are going to have to start embracing digital content in a whole new way, because I think it's going to become expected and comfortable for people, and the option.
Absolutely.
I feel like giving that option to the masses, to consumers, it's going to be expected. So
Yeah, on that note, it was sort of, if you don't adapt, you get left behind in this business. You have to reinvent yourself almost, with everything that goes through. And part of the reinvention of being able to do video is one of those things. When we started our workshop business years ago, it was just going out and you were taking people to great spots. You were teaching them how to photograph and everything else. But as more and more people got into it, we had to set ourselves aside from the others. We had to put ourselves in front of the others. So we started doing immersion workshops where you don't just go to the Grand Tetons, you experience the Grand Tetons. We base our winter workshop at a dude ranch, and you're away from the town, but you're experiencing part of the Western culture. And it's just phenomenal. We've had people that have attended 2 workshops, 3 workshops out there with us at the same place, because the food is incredible and the atmosphere is incredible. So, we're trying to get more to where, like when we do Apalachicola, our workshop down there, our interaction with the people in the town is the major part of it, what people like. I mean, they love getting the pictures, but at the same time, they've met other workshop participants and they've met local people that become a big part of their life as well. So, now the reinvention is the digital content, like you said, social media, digital content. I mean, as a photographer that's got my own business, I owe a lot to Facebook, because, Facebook to me is very little, if any, advertising money. So it's great to be able to have an avenue like that I can do that. I'm noticing it's getting darker because the sun is setting. So hopefully I don't fade away completely here. But you're right. I mean, digital content, it's all going to change, and photographers embrace it, because if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so I'm going to kind of wrap this business section up with one more question. If I don't want you to give away your secret sauce, but if you had one major tip or trick or piece of advice to give to someone who wants to be where you are and wants to get to that position, in their career, what would you tell them?
This is going to sound weird, but always photograph for you. Because when you photograph for you, it's a great representation of who you are. And, that if you want people to know your work, they've got to be able to see you in everything that you do. So, when you're photographing something, don't think about, some other photographer would do it this way, or some other photographer would do it a different way. Do what looks good to you. And everything else follows because, people start to recognize your work. It's just something they'll look at it, and it's funny because someone will call me and say, "Hey, I think it's someone's using one of your images," and I'll say, "No, that's not mine." And they said, "But it's got David Akoubian written all over it." And I'm flattered when they do that because it makes me feel like, okay, I've developed a style that people have sort of identified with. So it's flattering. But I guess the thing is every time you pick up the camera, photograph with yourself in mind, first of all. The business comes to you. When people see what you do, they'll come to you. You don't have to go and dig it up all the time. Like I said, the relationships that I built were based on the images that I supplied because they knew was my style. And that's we've always maintained that. I hope that made
Very cool.
sense.
No, absolutely.
Good.
I think the biggest compliment I've ever personally received was when someone told me that they recognized my image. And I was like, whoa, like, because you're not even aware of it yourself when you hear something, you know what I mean? Like, so it's a good thing. I don't know.
I have a friend of mine that does that, and it's the same thing. I'll get a message every once in a while. I was scrolling through something, I saw this image, and said, "Oh, it looks a whole lot like an Erica image." He's like, "It really was you." That's awesome.
Cool.
You're like, yes.
Now, if any time you see me like dive onto the ground, I've got a bat that lives up in a recessed light up here. His name's Bernard.
Oh,
So if you see me hit the
Bernard.
deck, it's because Bernard flew out. So.
Oh no. Well, I think.
Well, I've got your last few. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna segue to you and say Erica's got a few questions left. Quick.
Okay.
Rapid
Yeah,
fire.
we just got kind of like the last few, like kind of spitfire type questions
Before
as
we
far
lose
as,
you.
before I lose you into the darkness.
To the darkness.
So what is your favorite lens?
Yes.
Yes. So
It all depends because I guess if I could only carry one lens, God, that's mean. Because if I'm photographing birds, obviously it's the 150 to 600 G2. But when I'm doing just general work, landscape work, I see life in a wide angle world. I grew up looking at Arizona highways and David Munch and taking that foreground object and jamming the lens in close. I'd have to say my go-to favorite lens right now is the 17 to 28 on a Sony body.
okay, good choice. Very good choice.
And then,
So, all right.
if I can't have that
next
one, it would be the 35 to 150 for my Nikons.
Someone literally just commented that on our Facebook. Said, "Love my 35 to 150." So.
Yep.
Beautiful,
That recently became one of my favorites too. So I'll second that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So next Spitfire question. What is one thing you cannot live without on a photo shoot? So that doesn't have to be gear. That doesn't have to be a lens or a tripod or a camera, anything photography related. That can be a granola bar or a cup of coffee, which Jonathan agreed he doesn't drink coffee, but
it would be
what
coffee.
would yours be?
It would definitely be coffee. Yeah. A couple of years ago, I got one of the Tamron canteens, the clean canteens.
Yes.
That thing goes everywhere with me. So I'd have to say it would have to be coffee in a clean canteen from Tamron.
Nice.
Perfect. It just tastes better in the clean canteen, right?
It really does. And when I travel in the airplanes, I always get the Bailey's Irish Cream and mix it with that. So it makes the traveling a little bit easier as well.
Okay, perfect. So when you are traveling, so what would be your dream location or dream photo shoot?
I'm gonna have to steal the guide we hired in Iceland. I'm gonna have to steal his because it is perfect. It would be a waterfall with a double rainbow and a mermaid and a unicorn, all in the same picture.
I think you can make that happen.
Yeah.
I could, right?
Yeah.
If anyone can pull it off.
Yeah, for me, and I'm really fading out bad. Sorry about that, you guys.
Like, where are you going?
Yeah, let me see. I'll see what I can do. Hang on, let's see if this will work.
I kind of like it.
Funny little cell phone light.
And let's see if I hit the flashlight. Does that help? Hey, there you go.
You look
We're
like,
having,
there we go.
we're having a
Looks like you're-
fireside chat now.
Yeah, you look like you're lit by a campfire. I love it. Very
So,
fitting.
I guess my dream shoot, I've been on my dream shoots, and it's just being in a beautiful location with good light. Um, I think that's what makes it to me is just, just being someplace that it's just being out in nature is my dream location. So
Awesome.
that's a cheesy answer, but I like the unicorn
It's a
and
real
mermaid
answer.
better.
All right. So what's next for you? What's next on your docket? Of course, I know we have the Tamron tour going on, but what's next?
The hopefully the Tamron tour will get started back up. Well, hopefully, first of all, hopefully everybody, this virus, gets under control, and the loss of life is not too bad. Everybody gets back to normal. I've got the tour coming up, starting, I think May the 7th is the first date, and I'm thinking it's in Milwaukee. I'd have to look at the calendar. Then I'm supposed to be in San Diego in the middle of the month, and at the end of the month in Milwaukee. Then in the beginning of June, I'm scheduled to do a 2-week workshop with Lisa Langell, one of the Tamron ambassadors, up in Alaska. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's so
And
cool.
then spending a week at the ranch in Wyoming, doing some photography for them is on the agenda. Then we've got the tour the rest of the year. So, and then a couple out of Chicago events in September and October in Moab and Acadia. So
Nice. Yeah, you got a full list of things to do.
I do. Got a lot of plane tickets. So
Good. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I don't want to do until midnight because then we'll really lose you back there.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for spending time with us and for going through our crazy list of questions and teaching the world on photography. So thank you for that.
well, you guys are awesome. It's kind of interesting. I think what this is supposed to be about finding inspiration, and my relationship with Tamron has inspired me so much because I've met people like yourselves that are not only just super knowledgeable, but seeing y'all's work inspires me. Having you guys as friends is just super super great, and it's inspiring as well. So thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Jonathan Thorpe says hi. FYI, he just
Hey,
he
Jonathan.
just tuned in.
Hey, Jonathan, want some decaf coffee?
And there
You're
he
never
goes.
going to let him
Bye.
live that one down, huh?
No. Yeah, I thought about cutting my hair Jonathan Thorpe style, but
Oh my God, please do that.
He does have great hair, though.
I've got to get some tips. I mean, how's he maintaining that during this time? Because I mean, surely he doesn't do it himself. He's got to have somebody come over and do it. So
I don't know.
I don't know, but you talk about wanting to find Sasquatch. I'm going to have like Sasquatch on the top of my head pretty soon if I don't get a haircut. So there's, I need
Jonathan
a
says
haircut badly.
you should cut your hair like him. I'm assuming that's what that you should means.
oof,
So, well,
that'd be
thank you.
tough. The next time I see him, I'll have to ask him, get some tips. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and
Thank you, guys.
we'll have another interview hopefully very soon. So stay tuned on the Tamron page. Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you guys, and thank
Thank
you
you,
all
everyone.
out there in the interwebs that have taken the time out of their evening to watch this. So thank you.
Have a great night, guys.
Good night.
Bye bye. Good night.
All right.
All right.